Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. We're going to be talking today about something I did that I'm a little embarrassed about. And today's episode is all about standing out with your customers. And the story today is absolutely something that stood out for all the wrong reasons. Hey, my name is Blake Benz. I'm the host of the Good Advice Podcast, and you've come to the right place to learn how to do business better. There's no fluff on the podcast, just the things that actually work out in business. Hey, before we jump in, here's a word from one of the businesses that sponsored today's episode.
Do you ever feel like your payment processor is robbing you blind? For some of us, it's not blind. We look at the amount of money that's going to our payment processor month after month, and a lot of times we ask ourselves, is there a better way? I'm making good money, yet so much of it isn't actually ending up in my pocket. In the world of payment processing, in many cases, it's a cashless world, so you have to have a payment processor you can really trust. I personally am a big fan of Brad Norwood, who's the owner of PrimePaymentsUSA.com. Brad's a business owner himself. He knows all the challenges that come with running a business. More importantly, he knows the value of an individual customer. See, some of these bigger businesses, they're all about scale. They're all about bringing in as many customers as possible. But do they know your name? Do they know your business? Do they know what's important to you? In many cases, the answer is no. And in worst cases, they're just looking to get as much money from every transaction that you work hard for, which really doesn't feel too good. So you got to reach out to Brad Norwood today and understand how he's doing business and why it can save you money month after month. More importantly, you might even ask him about his zero-fee payment processing that he's offering to a select few of people. Go to PrimePaymentsUSA.com and start putting the money that you worked hard for back into your pocket.
All right, so fair warning, I have been sick with a cold, so this will be a little bit of a shorter episode today, but I was talking to a friend of mine, a customer on Tuesday about this book, Unreasonable Hospitality, and we were just kind of swapping stories of just ways that we've tried to stand out with our customers. And one of the things I was talking about with another person a few weeks ago was we were basically sharing notes on like what's a strength and a weakness, which sounds like kind of like your stereotypical conversation, I guess, but the thing that I mentioned to him was I said, I can be really intentional and intentful, and sometimes it's a little much. And the example I was thinking of that came to mind on Tuesday when I was chatting with a friend of mine was we were talking about this book, Unreasonable Hospitality. And the whole premise is a fantastic book, by the way, incredible book for thinking about how do you wow your customers. But I was talking about, for my business, a lot of times what people do in business is they send a thank you card or they send like the pre-printed envelope, that's like, thanks for your business. And it's like it looks like a real signature, but it's a printed signature, basically anything that a business can do without having to put in a shred of effort. And it's always been really important to me to thank my customers, to be intentional with my customers. Even people who aren't my customers. I have a guy he's my customer now, but and this wasn't part of a sales pitch. It just coincidentally, we do business together now. But before we even did business together, it was his birthday, and I knew it was a really important birthday to him. And so I had a cake sent to him, one of those little like cake things that you like open up the box and it like, pops open, kind of decorative, kind of fun little thing. So I sent that to someone who wasn't a customer because I was trying to be intentional. It's just kind of how I operate. And it's not like to pat myself on the back. It's just the way I work, I guess. So going back to my original comment though, sometimes I do it in a way that is a little much, and it's not out of, any malintent. I've just learned that, for some people it's like, oh wow, that was, I wasn't expecting that. So I'll give you an example of this. I was trying to be grateful to someone that I had done some business with, and I knew that I think it was like her 10-year anniversary for her business. I do try to keep track of these things. I have dates of people's birthdays. I have dates of like special events for them. I have a person that posted about her grandmother passing away and how her grandmother was like really pivotal in her life. And then the next year, when it was her grandmother's anniversary of her death, or maybe it was her birthday, I reached out to that person and said, "Hey, yeah, I saw that it was your grandmother's birthday and happy birthday." Which, again, in hindsight, this person was probably like, "Wow, this is a huge weirdo. Why do you know my grandmother's birthday?" But fortunately, in this case, it was someone that I had interacted with quite a bit. And man, I guess I can't take that back. Actually, now that I say it out loud, I'm like, man, that this is the perfect example of what I'm talking about. Of trying to be intentional, and then in hindsight, it's like, did I really message that person happy birthday to their grand? Like, I guess I come across as a stalker, actually. So I do try to keep track of dates, birthdays, anniversaries for business. Um, just the other day, someone told me it was their 17-year anniversary for their business. And, I try to keep track of these things. I try to write these things down because, not because any of these things are, great little tricks for sales. I think it's just in a world that's just very commoditized and interactions are very commoditized. I think that there's just some value in like noticing people and, um, just being appreciative and a little thoughtful. And I don't know. I don't want to sound like more, um, I don't want this to come across as like more, uh, not holier than thou or like pat my own back kind of thing. But, it is something that I think about a lot. Anyway, let me get back to the point. So I had this person who I think it was like, just as like an aside, sometimes this is also kind of awkward where I saw that it was someone's like anniversary of their business. So I messaged them and said, "Hey, I think it's your business's anniversary." And they were like, "What? No, it's not." And I was like, "Oh, I think it is." And now suddenly I'm like in this weird conversation where I'm trying to convince this person that it is their business's birthday as if they wouldn't know it themselves. And so the person's like, "No, it's not." And I'm like, "Okay, no big deal. I look like a weirdo. All good." But then that person came back and was like, "Holy cow, dude, it is my business's birthday. Thank you for reminding me." So, another example of I'm going somewhere with this. And in fact, as I'm, doing this podcast episode, I'm just like, there's really nothing other than making me look strange in doing today's episode. But the king of all these cringy stories was I um, reached out to someone. It was her, I think it was like her 10-year anniversary for her business or like 5-year anniversary for her business or something. And it was someone who I really appreciated and respected and who had kind of gone out of her way to help me get business for my business started when I was first starting out. This is probably like 5 or 6 years ago. So I really appreciated this person. And I saw that, again, it was like their business's anniversary. So I was thinking, what's like a gift that would be really cool and like not super strange and credit to myself. I walked myself. I kind of, I knew this person was like Native American and like this was like a big part of their identity. Like they talked about it a lot and had a lot of pride around it. So like first I was looking at like I think I looked at like cooking books, like Native American cooking books or something. And I was like, okay, this is getting so specific and so strange. And like as I was looking at Amazon, I was like, I can't send this. This is going to come across as so strange. So instead, I dialed it back and I was like, okay, let's do something a little simpler. I'm going to send something that has like the date of her business's anniversary. So I'm like, what do I send? And I'm like, okay, I'll send like a little um like golden wristlet, like a little bracelet that has like a little gold plate and inscribed on it. It was like one of these things where you could order it online and you could put a date on it or words or something. So I put the date of the business, like the start date of the business on it. So I had this mailed to this individual. And I'm patting myself on the back. I'm like, yeah, that was nice. A nice gesture. Again, there wasn't like a sales pitch attached to it. It was just, I want to be intentional and I want to also thank this person for being so kind and generous with my business. So this person reaches out to me a few days later and they're like, "Hey, I got the bracelet you sent." And I'm like, "Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that. Hey, I appreciate you. Thanks." And she goes, "Hey, so my husband wanted to know if we were having an affair." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And she was kind of like half laughing and she was like, "Yeah, like I had to tell him, I swear we're not having an affair. I swear nothing's going on." And I'm just like, I'm dying. I'm just dying. I'm thinking, I cannot believe I just created this strange, awkward circumstance. By the way, I don't think I ever really spoke to this person again after this ordeal because I was so embarrassed. But again, this is like the king of cringe examples of where sometimes things that you're good at can also be a real, uh, negative about you too. And I am an intentional person. I try to be very intentional and I try to do things that other people won't do. Probably things that people are smarter and more wise. They're wiser about not doing some of these things. But I've had to learn over the years that sometimes my intentionality comes across a little strange. And in the case of this individual, created an awkward conversation with her spouse. So going back then to this book, Unreasonable Hospitality, the whole premise of the book is to do things that wow your customers. And what this means is it's written by a guy who was a chef, and I'll let you check out the book. I don't want to get into like the super weeds of the story, but basically this guy made a name for himself for like really going above and beyond for the customer. And a lot of people, they don't understand that unreasonable hospitality, this concept, is not about just smiling and saying thank you for your business. It's not about saying, hey, I appreciate you doing business with me, or being polite. Like I think a lot of people think that good customer service is I didn't curse at you, I didn't yell at you, I did my best. And these things really aren't truly transformational, incredible customer experiences. They just really aren't. The whole premise of the book is to be willing to go beyond that point where other competitors and other people in your industry would say, that's unreasonable. That's not scalable. That's not profitable. How could you do those things? And therein is actually the point. It's doing the things that other people aren't willing to do, or the money that other people aren't willing to spend, or the time that other people aren't willing to commit to. That's what causes you to actually stand out in people's mind. Back in the day when I used to do tons of podcast interviews, we only do a handful now. And maybe in future time, I'll get back to doing lots of them. But I used to do lots of interviews, probably like maybe 70 or 80 in a year, maybe 100. And what I would do is I would send a handwritten note to every person who came on the podcast. And it wasn't like a generic handwritten note. It was, hey, so-and-so, thank you for coming on the show to talk about blank. I really enjoyed learning about it, and it made me think about X, Y, and Z. I wish you well, Blake. So it was specific to the person. And I had to mail these things out, sometimes all over the country, sometimes to other countries, because sometimes I had guests on that weren't from my country. And again, by the way, an example of just an awkward moment. I asked someone for their mailing address, and the person was like, I am not comfortable giving you my mailing address. But here's my email, and you can send a digital card, which, to be fair, in my defense, literally the only request was, hey, I'm just sending a thank you note out. There's no sales or swag or anything like that with it. What would be the best address to send this to? And then the person responded with, I'm not comfortable with that, which is fine. It's, nothing against that person. But sometimes, again, you'll try to be intentional and people will be like, that's strange. That's weird. That's also where the magic happens. So I think the message today is really thinking about, what do I do? What do I offer? How do I wow people in a way they don't expect or that they don't get from other people in your industry, from your competitors? How do you give a truly meaningful? In fact, I went to a restaurant. I think I talked about this on a recent episode, but I went to a restaurant just a nice restaurant for a special occasion. And they brought out, the server overheard me talking about shrimp cocktail. And I was talking about, does anyone want it? No one wanted it. And then the server brought it out anyway and said, hey, I overheard you talking about this. I wanted you to be able to try it. Here you go. They brought out some other extra sides. At the end, they brought out some Wagyu steak on the house. I mean, they really just treated us in an incredible way. And so much so that I was just floored by it. And I asked them if they had ever read the book Unreasonable Hospitality. And it turns out the owner of the restaurant is friends with the chef who wrote that book. So it all kind of makes sense. But that's really the point, is how do you create incredibly intentional, meaningful moments with people so that they're wowed by you and they want to do business with you. And if they're not in a position to do business with you, they're willing to refer you and talk about you and talk you up. And unfortunately, years later, I think I've gotten a little bit better at this kind of stuff, about not being super creepy, super weird. So I think that is the advice: is be intentional, but don't be weird about it. Be intentional, but don't be creepy, because people, it's a big world out there. And, you don't want to be known as the weird guy, the creepy person, like maybe you don't show up at their house and be like, hey, I have a gift for you. Maybe the mail is like a good distance between you and that individual. I say that because for me, I feel like I have at least a little bit of an appreciation of nuance, but I would hate for someone to hear my advice today and then really weird someone out. Respect and appreciate all the normal societal boundaries. And especially, I've learned this, especially with other genders, someone who's the opposite gender of yours, especially being very cognizant and very aware and very thoughtful about, is this going to come across the wrong way? How might this be perceived? How might this be perceived by other people? If you're sending someone a little note about their anniversary, maybe it's not jewelry, maybe it is just a cake. Maybe it is just and also I think tailoring gifts and things like that to things that someone actually has talked about being important to them. So the whole reason that I was looking at Native American cookbooks is because this person was posting a lot and sharing a lot about how their genealogy was such a integral part of who they were. But if someone's never talked about that, please don't send them something about like, hey, I thought maybe you were Irish, so I sent you this Irish, history book. Or, if someone has never talked about their business and its anniversary, don't look up their business's anniversary. I only capture, like, the guy that I sent the birthday cake to, he had talked a few times about how important this birthday was and how special it was and how much he was looking forward to it. And so for me, it was like, hey, I know this was a special gig coming up. Happy birthday, man. Cheers. But if someone hates birthdays or they don't ever talk about it, please don't pay money to find out their date of birth and then send them. They're like, you've never had a conversation with them and they're like, who is this guy? So have some tact and appreciation for boundaries. And I would say, when in doubt, maybe be a little more reserved about it, so you don't come across in a weird way, and you don't find yourself having to learn from the lessons that I've had to learn over the last several years about that was weird, or that was strange, or that person's husband thought we were having an affair. All these little quirks you learn along the way. Maybe just sending coffee is a nice enough gesture than, some really intense thing that weirds someone out. So be intentional, but don't be weird. That's the message today. Anyway, hey, I appreciate you tuning into the podcast today. If you are a first-time listener, what are you waiting on? Click subscribe or follow so you can keep getting the weird advice on the podcast wherever you are. And don't forget, you can always support the podcast on our Patreon, patreon.com/goodadvice. I appreciate all of those who support the podcast and also the businesses who support the podcast through our advertising. Thank you so much. That's today's good advice. We'll see you later.